Hi everyone, Fantasy here with That One Farmer, and I am checking in to share with you how to can some spaghetti sauce this evening. This is going to be my first time actually canning some spaghetti sauce or pasta sauce, and I'm actually going to use the Mrs. Wages sauce mix. I've heard really great things about the Mrs. Wages pasta sauce mix. I'm going to add some of my own seasoning and of course season that to flavor. So as we get started this evening, the first thing I like to do is lay out all of the tools I'm going to need this evening. As you can see, I have my food process here that's going to help us process the tomatoes a little bit quicker and into a much smoother consistency. I also have my ladle for when we're ready to can. I have my jars here already in my water bath canner. I actually like to go ahead and sterilize them in the canner. I take them out, pour the water out of them, and set them right here on the counter. That way they're ready to go. In the backhand corner, I've got my lids and my sills already sterilized. So generally you want to bring your water to a little boil, sterilize those rings and those lids. You can do it multiple ways. I just like to do it on the burner so everything's going all at once. I've got a large stock pot full of rolling boiling water, which we're going to toss these tomatoes in here in just a little bit. That way we can get the skins off pretty easy. So we're going to blanch those here in just a little bit. And then this is just simmering, waiting to, go to that final step in the process. But we've got quite a bit of work to do tonight. I've got my canning jar grabber. I've got my magnetic lid so I can grab those out of that hot pot. And I've got my headspace, also helps with air bubbles. In addition, I've got a cooling rack, got a wet washcloth that we're going to need to wash off those lids. We've got 17 pounds of Roma tomatoes and then some smaller kind of hybrid tomatoes. They didn't grow quite as big as I would have liked this season, but that's all right. We've got 17 pounds to work with. I've got a bowl here for the cores and for the tops. So we're actually going to take the cores and the tops off first. We've already washed our tomatoes. I got these bins off of Amazon. They're so great because I also have one in my sink for when we blanch them and put them in ice cold water to take the skins off. That's going to work perfectly because then I'll just swap the totes out. So I'm pretty excited about that process. So the first thing we're going to do to get started, we have our sills and our lids going. We've got our hot water getting ready to boil to blanch these tomatoes. And then we've got our stock pot, our water bath, sterilizing our jars. So the next step is quite cumbersome. So we're literally going to decore all of these. And I don't have one of those nice little cores that I've seen quite a few people have. That would be super nice. So I'm just going to cut the tops off, grab the core out, and sorry about that, stick them in the bowl. I also have a stainless steel bowl handy here. And so that's really what I'm going to do is just take the cores out. Also note that if there's any yucky part of my tomato, this is the time where I will usually cut that out. It's going to be a lot easier to cut it out now as opposed to later when you're trying to take the skin off. And so again, I wish I had one of those little coring tops, but this works just the same. It just takes a little bit longer. So we're going to get all these cored, which will take probably a good 30 minutes. And then we're going to blanch them. And so, of course, I just want to say welcome to my page and my channel. I've lived here on the hill for the last 3 years. I've been homesteading for 3 years. And I work full-time. My husband works full-time. But in the evenings on the weekends, we spend most of our time here on the homestead raising our 2 children that are 14 and 11 and making homemade food because we love to know where our food came from and having that opportunity to know how to make food, especially in an emergency with food prices an average of 24% higher than they have been in the last 2 years. Well, of course, then we want to be a little bit more self-sufficient, don't we? And so that's what got us started in homesteading, canning, gardening, raising our own pigs, raising our own cows, our own chickens. You probably see the eggs in the back. So we do that too, of course. And so you can join me on this journey over the next several years. We find it to be a blessing to have this opportunity. It is a lot of hard work. It is very time consuming as well, as you can see. So I'm gonna keep coring these and not bore you or talk your ear off. So I will get these tomatoes cored, and I'll come back here in just a little bit once I've got them cored and ready to be blanched in the hot water so we can talk about the next process. Hey there, everybody. It's Fantasy again. And look, I got a friend. So of course I told you this was gonna take a while to do, so I definitely needed another set of hands. You know, they actually say that many hands make light work light. That's true. We'll get done twice as fast now that I have another decorer here. This is my husband, JD. And he did remind me that I actually have 3 children. I mentioned I had 2, but we do have a daughter that is an adult, 23 years old. She lives in North Carolina. She's a second lieutenant in the Army. So I did happen to forget her because she doesn't currently live on her homestead. So Cheyenne, I love you and I'm sorry. I would certainly never forget you, but. So we're just coring these. We've got these little bitty baby tomatoes. They're kind of a pain in the butt. Sometimes like my son Tayton, but you know, but they're just as sweet and amazing as all the others because it literally takes every single tomato I have from my garden to make this pasta sauce. So JD, how have you enjoyed the adventures here on the homestead for the last 3 years? He's really the muscle of the family.
I can say I've enjoyed it. Not all of it, but most of it.
What have you enjoyed about it?
Just being able to provide the food for the family and you know, be sustainable. That's the biggest thing for me, and learning too, right? So I guess the biggest thing for me is to tell everybody that does homestead or is trying to be self-sustaining, don't be scared to try. You know, you're going to try things, do things, and you're not always going to succeed at them, right? So take it as a lesson and go from there. So
yep.
That's about all I can say.
I would agree. We're actually getting ready to order some chickens. So we processed chickens a couple of times now, and that includes the Cornish cross. We have gotten anywhere from 25 to 100 at a time. And I think this next batch, we have some family going in with us, and so we're going to video that. We've got probably 75 to 100 coming in September, on September the 2nd. So we will share that little adventure with all of you.
It is an adventure, that is for sure.
JD actually built 3 chicken tractors, so it does make it a lot easier. And then we have a processing assembly station. So stay tuned for that video in the future. We'll kind of bring you along for the ride step by step. So we're gonna finish this coring up because it's gonna take us another 30 minutes.
For sure.
And then we'll move on to the next process, which is blanching these hot babies so we can get those skins off, get them undressed a little bit. So we'll see you soon. All right, we're back. So our scalding water is now, of course, boiling, and we've got a whole stainless steel bowl decored and ready to go in the hot water for 3 minutes. Once we bring it out of the hot water after 3 minutes, we're actually going to take it over here where I have a tub of ice water in the sink. I'm going to dip it in that ice water, let it sit for just about a minute, and then those skins are going to peel right off, and I'm going to show that to you. So we're going to go ahead and start dipping some of these into the hot water. I'm going to give myself a little bit of distance so I don't go burning myself. And you always want to give yourself a little bit of distance once that steam starts coming off that pot, of course. Judy, would you mind getting your phone? Thank you, honey. You know, no perfect home without a little bit of noise and happiness and someone texting or calling. We're normal just like the rest of you. Definitely not a commercial kitchen here at the Sherritt homestead.
Completely normal. Just put it out.
All right, we'll kick this into high gear a little bit. Get our first batch in there. Woo! Hot rods, hot diggity dog. All right, so 3 minutes is gonna start right now for this first batch. It is piping hot water, so it's not gonna take long, that's for sure. All right, that's about as full as I'm gonna wanna get it, so we're gonna do this in a couple of batches. When you're doing 17 pounds, which is quite a bit, then you're gonna need to do things in phases or batches. Could take a few hours of your time. For example, because we had 17 pounds of tomatoes, we're actually gonna use 3 packages of the Mrs. Wages pasta sauce. And that's to ensure that we have enough sauce mix, enough tomatoes to get our pints full and put away for the winter. So we'll be back soon. I'm gonna go ahead and give this 3 minutes. When we're ready to take it off the pot in just about a minute in the ice cold water bath, and then I'll bring you along for that adventure. All right, so over here, as I mentioned, we've got our water bath pot with our jars sitting in there, sterilizing. On the back burner, we've got those lids and the sills just waiting to be used. And I've got my tomatoes in here, blanching them for 3 minutes. We've got 1 minute left. When they are ready to go into the cold water, I'm gonna take them out, and we're actually gonna bring them over here into this pan. It did have ice in it, so it is ice cold. We're going to then, of course, transfer them over to our next food grade tub. I got these food grade tubs on Amazon. They were 4 for $27, and I will link those below. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off so I don't get burnt in the process, but we'll see you shortly. Okay, great. So we've got these out of the scalding hot water. Now I'm dumping them into the cold water, the ice bath here. Put some more ice in there. And they only need to be in there for just a moment. As you can see, if you look in here, they're already starting to peel. See how easy this is gonna be to take those skins right off of there? And then we just got the fleshy part. And so we're gonna put that in our other food grade tote. So we're ready to go ahead, come over here. Thanks, Tayden, for being my cameraman. I certainly appreciate it. We've got another batch ready to go into our scalding water. So that's what we're gonna do next. I'm just gonna gently drop those down there so I don't burn myself. And Tayden, make sure you scoop back just a little bit so you don't get burnt. We'll get our next set in there for 3 minutes. Woo-hoo! Hot diggity dog. All right, we're gonna go ahead and repeat this process. I'm gonna take these out and put them back into the food grade container, and we'll start on that one. So we'll see you in just a couple of minutes. All right, so as you can see, he is peeling the tomatoes.
I dropped it, hot potato.
And taking the skins off of them. They're coming off fairly easy. We'll also cut out any bad parts that we see while we're peeling those. And the next step is going to be cutting them into just probably in halves or quarters. And then we're going to put them in the food processor to blend them up and get a smoother paste-like consistency before we toss them in the pot with the seasonings and the sugar and the next steps. So he's getting those skins off. It's gonna take us probably another 15-20 minutes to get this step completed, and we'll be ready to rock and roll on the third step in the process. So see you soon. All right, we're back. So as you can see, we have the skinned cord, and I'm just gonna cut them up. So again, as I mentioned, we're using Mrs. Wages pasta sauce, and so the next step ultimately is to put these in the food processor. I'm gonna use my NutriBullet RX because I know that that's gonna put it into a nice, smooth consistency, and I want it to be just like pasta sauce. Now, it's probably gonna make it pretty smooth. In the event that I don't have enough tomatoes or I wanna thicken it after it cooks for about 25 minutes on the stove, I did pick up some tomato paste. I picked up 4 small cans. Usually you want to have these on hand in the event that your pasta sauce is not the consistency you like, which is, you know, kind of that medium thick consistency. I'm not adding bell peppers since this is my first run at getting this done, so I want to keep it as simple as possible. I would love to make my own pasta sauce with fresh garlic, cloves and onions and green peppers and all the great seasonings. but we're just gonna stick to the basics and show you that anyone can do this. So we're gonna go ahead and cut these up. I'm gonna start putting them in the processor, so I'm gonna show you that process real quick. So bear with me. So again, I wanna cut these up a little bit so my processor doesn't have to do all the work. And that way they will blend up a little quicker, and I'm not dulling my blades in that really nice Ninja right there, or that NutriBullet is what it is really. Makes amazingly awesome smoothies. It also makes some pretty good soups. If you keep it on there long enough, it'll heat up. I do have a Ninja, it's actually downstairs. I have a food processor too, so you could use a food processor. Those are a little bit larger. You know, those might chunk it up for you, and then you could boil it down. It's whatever tools you have that you want to use. Some people do not use the processor. That is not a required process. It just means you have to cook it a little bit longer. You can also put it in a roaster and roast it on 350 for about an hour and a half. And it's gonna simmer, might take about 2 hours. But of course you can also do that. That's a viable option as it relates to getting it to a smooth consistency, cooking down the tomatoes, getting those spices to really simmer into your sauce. That way when you're making your favorite marinara, spaghetti, lasagna, you've got that staple on your shelf and it's ready to go. So let's go ahead and get some of this put into the processor, and I'll show you what that looks like. We'll see if we're successful in getting these chopped down. So what I'm gonna do is grab a spoon. Actually, I think I will grab a measuring cup. That way I can dip these babies in there. I'm just gonna do a little bit at a time. So yes, this is gonna take me a little bit longer because I didn't go with a blender or a food processor. I went with the NutriBullet. It does have quite a bit of power, so let's see how it turns out. Boom, done, just like that. Okay, that was a good decision because that was fast. I'm gonna take it off of there, and I'm just gonna pour it directly in my pan because that's the next step, is getting it in my pan. And I ultimately want to only pulsate that for just a couple seconds because the NutriBullet is extremely efficient. And so you don't want it to be complete water. And that's why that tomato paste is gonna thicken it up a bit. Here we go. Check it out. This is gonna be fast. Make sure I get that covered so it doesn't splatter. I'll tell you about my husband's homemade butter story one day, but not tonight. Boom, done, just like that. We'll take that off. We're just gonna keep doing this until we have all these tomatoes in the pot. So I'm gonna hold you here with me as I get these done. It won't take too long. As you can see, I'm most of the way through my tomatoes. Now, while we had 17 pounds when we started, we probably ended up closer to 8 pounds, 10 pounds maybe. Yeah, I'd say at the end. Between coring and skinning, there was quite a lot of lost poundage, but that's okay. If I get just a couple pints, I'm gonna be happy on this first run. Less than 60 seconds, you see that? That's amazing. Get yourself a NutriBullet. You won't regret it. And no, they didn't pay me to make this video. I just like to share my products. Anything to make our lives easier, right? Especially if you are a busy mom. All right, we are halfway done. Stick these in here. And in between, what I like to do, of course, is take a moment to wipe down the counter, clean everything off, make sure that it continues to be sanitary. If I get something on any of this, I will run it back through hot water to make sure that it is sanitized. Because when you're canning, it is safety first. And I do like to use the kind of a balance between the canning guidelines and Rebel canning. Really, ultimately, what works for other people works for me. I'm not a canning snob. I'm definitely, I would say, a beginner, even though I've been doing it for 3 years, but I like trying new stuff. here we go. You ready? Wish this was margaritas or even a Bloody Mary. Boom, done. We're almost done here. One thing you do have to do when you're canning is have a little bit of patience, because as you can see, it takes quite a bit of time. I've been working on this pasta sauce actually for about 2 hours and 15 minutes now, and we have about an hour left, so do plan for it to take you half a day, 4 hours, not half a day, but about 4 hours to make a big batch of pasta sauce. And this really isn't even a big batch, but this is the process that I have. And I'm sure as I continue to do this, I'll get more efficient. If you have any questions, make sure you put those in the comments. If you have a favorite recipe for pasta sauce, please share that with me in the comments. That'd be great. That is so crazy fast. If you have favorite tools that you use in your kitchen to make your life a lot easier when you're making something, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on, because we do need to bring it to a boil. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn that on because we're on our last batch. And then I'll kind of walk you through the next step, which is adding those spices from Mrs. Wages. We need to bring this to a boil. Once it comes to a rolling boil, we're gonna stir it, and then we're actually gonna put it on simmer for 25 minutes. When it's done, we'll be ready to put it into our jars, and then we're gonna put it in the water bath for 40 minutes, boiling. So just some preemptive information there. All right, last batch, here we go. As I mentioned before, everyone has their own process. This is my first one, so we're gonna see how this turns out. I still can't believe how fast that is. I am following the Mrs. Wages recipe to a T, with the exception that I might add some additional spices, as I mentioned in the very beginning. So we've got this in here. It does say to bring it to a boil, so I'm putting this burner on high. Now I'm going to enter in 3 bags of Mrs. Wages. I'm going to do 2 3/4 of the last bag. As I shared, I don't believe we have as many tomatoes as we started off with. Some of those small tomatoes, they didn't make it. They died on the processing table. So I don't want it to be over seasoned and be too potent. We could always add tomato paste when we go to cook our spaghetti with our family. So I'm just going to put 3/4 of this one in there. And then I'll taste it as it cooks and see if I need to add the rest of the package. So it calls for the packages of Mrs. Wages. So I'm going to stir that up first. And then it's 1/4 cup of sugar per package of Mrs. Wages. So I'm going to add that next once I get this nice stirred up. So I'm just stirring this in the pan. I'll bring you over here in just a little bit as it starts to boil and cook. All right, we got that stirred up. Now I'm adding my sugar. So again, 1/4 cup per package. And I'll keep that extra 1/4 cup in because I like my spaghetti sweet. Tomatoes do have a high acidity, so it's okay to add the additional sugar. We're going to make sure we cook this for as long as recommended. Also water bath it for as long as recommended. And we should be safe and sound. There's nothing more fulfilling than hearing those pings when your lids, of course, are sealing. So I can't wait for that part. We're going to bring this to a boil, so I'll see you soon. Thanks. All right, so we're back, of course, here on That One Farmer, and these were those tubs I was telling you about. I got these on Amazon. They're 4 for $27, and they were amazing for tonight's processing. They helped me do things quickly and efficiently. They also, of course, you can take them outside and just get your produce from outside. I'll be using them tomorrow when I can some pineapple, so they'll come in handy for big batches of pineapple too. So here, oh, that smells so good. I wish you could be here smelling the spaghetti sauce. I'm probably gonna add a little bit more bay leaf and oregano to it, but Mrs. Wages does include all of the spices, so it does taste really good. Technically, I could leave it as is and then go ahead and season it when I pull it off the shelf to make spaghetti sauce. So you can see that this is a great consistency so far. It's gonna cook down even more. So it's gonna get a little thicker. Some of that water is going to evaporate as it starts to cook. We're gonna bring this to a rolling boil before we let it simmer. So I do have my burner on high and I'm just being patient, waiting for that to happen. My jars are still in there sterilizing, and I'm gonna clean up the rest of the counter, make sure I don't have any kind of cross-contamination and that my area is clean. Hey everybody, we are back and ready for the last step in processing our pasta sauce. So this has been on simmer for 25 minutes. I'm getting ready to take it off the heat. I'm gonna put it on my hot plate right here. I've got my water bath canner on high so it can start boiling. That'll save me a little bit of time. This does take a bit of a time, this part. I'm going to get my jar lifter, which is great. I do recommend getting your toolkit for canning. And I'm going to take each one of my pint jars and dump out the hot water that I had in there. That was nice, clean hot water. And now you can see that that's a hot jar. And this is just how I like to do it. Sometimes I have to dip a little bit of water out of my water bath canner because I end up with a little bit too much, but usually it's perfect, to be honest. You're going to want to leave a 1-inch headspace on these pint jars. And I've got a little tool that will actually help me do that. So these are nice and hot, ready to be packed. I've got one extra jar here just in case I need it. We're going to turn that up to hot. And here's the fun part. So I've got my handy dandy funnel there. I'm actually going to trade this. Ooh, those are nice and hot. They sure are. And put this here. And now we're just going to spoon. I need to get that a little bit closer. It's not quite close enough. So I'm going to scoot it over. I like things to be easy to manipulate and use. Stir this up a little bit. The spaghetti is just the right thickness. And now I'm just going to start. I wish I had a little bigger ladle. I do need to order one of those, because this doesn't hold a lot, so it takes quite a bit of time to get this filled up. But that's all right. It's quite relaxing, canning is. Especially if I have the kitchen to myself, I really enjoy it. It's quiet, it's just my time. And so we're canning this up. As I mentioned, it's gonna be a little messy because I don't have a big enough ladle, but that's quite all right. We're going to fill these to 1-inch headspace. I'll show you how to do that. And then we want to get the air bubbles out. 1-inch headspace is usually right about the bottom of that jar lid. But this will actually tell us. So it has little measurements on it. And the longest is 1 inch. So we're going to stick it right down in there, and that is perfect. So you really just want to come to the bottom of the jar. That gives it time to bubble inside the water bath canner. And now I'm just going to get the air out, because we definitely don't want air in any of our tomato-based products. So we're just going to swirl this around a little bit to get the air bubbles out. There we go. Perfect. I'm just going to go and get a paper towel to lay this on. I'm a little bit of a clean freak, so I clean as I go. That does sometimes make me a little slower than most people, but my husband says I'm slow too, so that's quite all right. Okay, so we've got our first jar. I want to make sure we wipe the sill. It's clean. That way, our sill gets locked down and we have no bacteria growing. That makes sure that it is shelf stable. And so I'm wiping that lid clean. I'm going to put a sill on there. And then I'm going to put this ring on there. Just squeeze it and then do it tight one time only. Then we can use our jar lifter, because usually I will make all my jars all at once, but because we only have 5 or 6 jars, I'm going to do one at a time. Now that you've seen this process almost complete, I'm going to bring you back. We're going to have that water bath canner rolling boil. We won't start the timer until it's actually boiling on high. And so with that being said, we're going to have those boil in the water bath canner for 40 minutes. That's based on our elevation and Mrs. Wage's recommendation. 40 minutes. Then we'll take the lid off the water bath canner, turn the heat off, and we'll leave them in there another 5 minutes. Once that 5 minutes is up, we'll be ready to set them back here on the counter where they'll stay overnight. And we'll check them in the morning to see if they sealed. Now I'm hoping when I take them out, you're gonna get to hear that heavenly sound of the kings with me on 1 or 2. And we're gonna do a happy dance when that happens. All right, so same thing. I like to be fairly consistent. Of course, I got that nice and messy, but that's quite all right. Checking my headspace, because the worst you could do is have a jar boil over. Certainly that's a lot of hard work messed up. Let's stir it a bit, get those air bubbles out. Stir it some more. Better safe than sorry. All right. Wipe that clean. Put my seal on. You know, I often have people ask me, canning takes a long time for some of those items. Wouldn't you rather be doing something else with your time? Maybe when I was younger, but now, no. I really enjoy this time, as I shared earlier, but more so, I've learned something new. Woo! I've learned a new craft already, you know, and so I can take care of my family. And I feel like this is a skill that is a lost art. And I'm self-taught. My mom passed away, but even prior to that, I've never had anyone teach me how to can. I went straight to YouTube. And the Ball canning book, the blue book of canning. And next I'm gonna conquer pressure cooking, but I plan to get a Presto electric pressure cooker because I'm a baby like that and I don't want to blow the house up. And yes, I hear that it's just fine, but I think it's intimidating. So I like things to be easy, efficient, and even a beginner can do it because I do work full time and I teach college classes part-time. I'm a wife and a mom. And we have this farm full of animals. So I need things that are fast and easy for me to do. All right, getting a little messy here, so my apologies. But pasta sauce is one of those things that's not as forgiving. And I'm going a little backwards there, but that's quite all right. I'll wipe this ring again. Same thing. If you'd like to see me try canning something else new for the first time, leave me a comment, send me a message. I'm happy to try anything once. Tomorrow night, I've got 10 pineapples that I got for 99 cents. So I'd encourage you, go check out that video when it's available and you can see how I processed and canned my pineapples. All right. So far, so good. As I mentioned, I'm a beginner, so this is working out all right so far. aside from just a couple messes, but I'm otherwise doing a fairly good job, I think, for a beginning canner, first time pasta maker. This pasta is a great consistency. It tastes very savory. I do want to note that I ended up using the rest of that package, that 1/4 amount of Mrs. Wages. I felt like I like it a little bit more savory, and so I did end up using that. I didn't need to use all of the tomato paste, so that's great. I did add 2 cans of very small cans of tomato paste. I like a thick spaghetti sauce, and our tomatoes were a little off this year, so there were a lot of tiny ones. And as you may know, if you're experienced, tiny tomatoes don't have a whole lot of flesh. And so I improvised with the tomato paste. And a fellow canner had actually made that recommendation. And so I'm glad I picked it up and had it on hand just in case I needed it. We're gonna stir this up. Make sure we get those air bubbles out. Again, I would hate to ruin a good can of pasta. All right, so my last video cut out a little bit short, but I'm back to show you a rolling boil. And you want your water level to be about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches above these pint jars. There's not a whole lot of room left after that, but you can see it is a rolling boil there. And we've got approximately 15 more minutes on this boiling water bath. Once those are finished up, we will of course turn the heat off and let them sit an additional 5 minutes. And then we're gonna transfer them right here to the counter and listen for the musical pings. So we'll be back. All right, we are done. Yay. So this has been sitting for 5 minutes. It boiled for 40 and then it sat for 5 with the heat off. I'm now getting my jar lifter and I'm going to lift out my jars. I didn't have any siphoning. Siphoning is when your headspace maybe was off and your jars actually end up overflowing in the pot, which can happen. You think you got it right and then you didn't. Ooh, sorry. Now, I'm not gonna get the water off the top of these. I'm just gonna let it set on there. I will wipe it off tomorrow morning before I label and put them away. And so we're gonna get these all out of the water bath canner. Look at these beautiful jars of spaghetti sauce. I love spaghetti sauce. I'm so happy. So this is the final product. Looks great. I wonder if we'll hear a magical ping. We might. Usually takes about 5 or 10 minutes before you hear that magical ping. It's like music to your ears. So I won't keep you, but I want to say thank you for watching this video, learning how to start canning your own spaghetti sauce. As you can see, it did take some time to get it done. Approximately start to finish about 4.5 hours, believe it or not. 4.5 hours worth of work for 5 pints of spaghetti sauce, and then I have 2 quarts. I have 1 quart in the refrigerator already that I'm gonna eat this week. But these are shelf stable for 12 to 18 months. And of course, they may be 1 to 2 mils for us, it just depends. But it was made with love, was made from our farm, and we learned a new skill. So until next time, I hope you all have a great day and take care. Goodbye and God bless. All right, so very quick this morning, I just wanted to show all of you that my lids did pop, and that's super important. So that means that they are all sealed and ready to go on the shelf. Now we don't store them on the shelf with the ring. Some people do, but the best practice is to take the rings off. See how nice and easy those come off. That's because of that pressure and the release of the air during the water bath process. And so this way we can check the seal, and we can, of course we know they're sealed, but you know, that way when they are on the shelf, should that seal unpop, which it happens not very frequently, but at least you're gonna know, and you're not gonna get gross things all around the edges or bacteria inside. I just like to take the rings off. Now, if I bring these out of my pantry and put them in my refrigerator, then of course I will put a ring back on it as I store it. But I do have some plastic ones that I love. But either way, once it's open, you're gonna use it within a week. So there you have it. They all pinged overnight, so it was music to my ears. And of course, we had a successful batch of pasta sauce. Until next time, have a great day and God bless.